few days ago, I was doing dishes and mentally going over my tasks for the day. And I remember that I needed to call my dad, check up on my mom, speak with my sister who mentioned to me that she had been ill, call my other two sisters who were traveling to know if they arrived safely, call my brother, one of my brothers who's in uni, who had mentioned to me that he was having some headaches, and also check up on my other brother who had mentioned to me that he was ill. It was past 9 p.m. I just finished from work and I was exhausted. Yet my big sister brain was inundated with the need to do what big sisters know how to do best. Look after their siblings and their parents. Honestly, being the first daughter in an African household is both challenging and rewarding, to be frank. And today I want to talk about it. I want to talk about the firstborn daughter syndrome in an African household. And I'm going to be sharing about that. I'm going to be talking about what I have learned and what I am still learning about being the firstborn daughter in an African home. So if this is your first time listening to this podcast, thank you so much for choosing to spend this time with me today. My name is Loretta and this is Life Lessons with Law, where we have honest, open, authentic, heart-to-heart conversations on womanhood, love, and life as a whole. And if you're a returning listener, thank you so much. You are literally family. Okay, so lessons on being the first daughter in an African home. Just a quick backstory, just so that I can provide some context to this gist. Right? I'm the first daughter and the first child of my parents. So now, it is one thing to be the first daughter in an African home, but if you're both the first daughter and the first child, that is a different ball game. That's a realm. that's a realm. Like, it's a realm of authority. And if I could use one word to describe what that means in an African home, it would be responsibility, with a capital R, like with a huge R. And honestly, it can be quite overwhelming. This responsibility, this first daughter responsibility, can be overwhelming. It can be challenging. It can be difficult, to be frank. And I have a lot to say about this. When you do a quick search on Google about firstborn daughters, there is a lot of information, a barrage of information online about this. People have written a lot of blog posts about this, but when you look through these posts and these articles about it, there's a common thread, a common theme, and I want to just go through some of that quickly. If you're a firstborn daughter, I'm sure you would be able to identify with some of these traits and characteristics that I'm about to outline. So the first is that as a first daughter, you practically don't have a childhood. You don't. Like, you literally become a mini parent as a child. Especially if your parents had many children like mine did. Your childhood is literally non-existent. And it will be majorly characterized by changing diapers, doing chores, babysitting your siblings, cooking, settling quarrels, and the impact that has on you is quite profound. And one of it is that you learn early on to put yourself last. Like, you learn early on to carry so much burden that you practically forget about yourself and you put the needs of other people first. And even when the thoughts of you doing something for yourself comes up, you immediately feel guilty for considering it, because you have been raised to believe that you must sacrifice. You must continue to make sacrifices for your family, for your siblings, and that is your responsibility. You have to be the example. And what that means is that you have to constantly put your needs at the bottom and everyone else is on top. An example of this is that you might want to do some extracurricular activities or join an after-school club in school, but your parents will be like, oh, Who would look after your siblings? Who would make their lunch? Who would do their laundry? So you learn from that age that your needs don't matter, and to be a good child, you must sacrifice your needs for other people. It's sad, but that is one of the major impacts that has on you. And what happens is that you grow into adulthood with this trait, and you literally you feel guilty when you start putting yourself first. And I'm going to talk about this later on. But yeah, that's just one of the characteristics that you find in this first daughter syndrome thing. The second characteristic is that you constantly worry about other people. You give until you're spent, and you usually have no energy you don't receive the same energy. Most of the time you are a 99% giver, because you are constantly giving. You're constantly giving your time. You're constantly giving your resources, be it financial resources. You are constantly giving. It's a cycle, because you grew up taking care of other people, giving them your things. Like sometimes I remember when I was growing up, things that belonged to me, my mother would take them away from me and give them to one of my siblings if they wanted it. So you learn from that age that you have to give. If they want it, you have to give. If they desire it, if they need it, you have to give, right? And you are constantly worrying about them, like in like what I said earlier about worrying about my mom and my dad and my siblings who are ill. You are constantly worrying. You're constantly thinking, oh, this person needs this. Oh, this person asks for this. Oh, is this person okay? And most of the time, you don't receive that kind of energy. Like your siblings don't really worry about you as much as you worry about them. Right? The question is, it's usually not balanced. It always tips, right, with you at the other end constantly being anxious about your siblings and your parents and being anxious about their well-being. And then the third characteristic is the pressure to parent your siblings. So from an early age, you learn that it is your job, in quote, to be a mini parent to your siblings. So you have to tell them what to do. You have to take care of them. I remember when I was growing up, because my parents were working parents, so most of the time I was usually at home with my siblings. So it was my job to organize how much we would spend out of our lunch money, organize what we would eat, take care of the house. So you're kind of like a mini parent, because to be fair, your parents are overwhelmed with a lot of the responsibility of parenting. They kind of delegate a part of it to you, right? So just take that pressure off of them, and then you now begin to handle some of these things on their behalf. And so usually you feel responsible for your siblings. You feel responsible for the decisions that they make. You feel responsible for how they turn out, because get this, you're their parents, so you feel like you have to guide them, you have to teach them the way to go, you have to train your siblings, in quote. You have to raise them to be good people, raise them to be responsible people. It's not your job, but you do it. And then you feel responsible for how they turn out. And if they don't turn out well, you feel responsible for that. You kind of feel like, oh, I did not teach them well, and things like that. Another trait is that there is this suffocating performance-based personality that you end up taking on. And the reason is because you are practically groomed to live for other people. You're practically groomed to exist for other people. So what it does is that it makes you want to be perfect, because you always hear things like, and I'm sure so many firstborn daughters might be able to relate to this, because your parents constantly tell you, oh, you have to be an example to your siblings. You have to be responsible. You have to show them, because they're looking up to you. So you constantly have that at the back of your mind. And sometimes the downside to that is that there's this, I call it good girlism, where you're not allowed to make mistakes. You need to be perfect. You need to be 100%. And when you do make mistakes, your level of correction is different from what your siblings would get if they made that same kind of mistake, right? And for example, if maybe you did not do well in school, you'll get scolded much more than your siblings would. So it makes you want to chase perfectionism because somehow it's ingrained in your mind that you need to be perfect, you need to get it all the time. And what that does to you as you grow up to adulthood is that you become an overachiever, and when you do make mistakes, you hit yourself so hard. In your world, you are not allowed to make mistakes. In your world, you are not allowed to be weak, because you have been groomed from when you were a child to always be strong, to always be perfect. So when you grow up into an adult, you put up that, face of perfectionism. You constantly chase that. And you also find it hard to show weakness. You always want to be strong, even when you're not strong yourself. Like, you always want to put up that bold face, even when that's not really the case. It's difficult for you to ask for help because you grew up not receiving help, so it's difficult for you because you are the giver. You're usually not the receiver. And so there's also people pleasing, because you learn early on that it is your job to make everybody happy. It is your job to make your parents proud. It is your job to make your siblings happy. It is your job, and then you grow up into a people pleaser. And you learn to suck things up, be mature, don't complain, because of course you have to be an example. Even normal childhood behavior is not overlooked. Things that that my baby sister she would just do and go free. When I was her age, I dare not. So it's just one of the things that happens as a first child. And so you learn to pretend. You kind of go through life, your childhood, your teenage years, pretending to be somebody that you're not. Now, this is not an exhaustive list, and I'm sure that if you're the firstborn daughter, there are so many other things that you can say about these traits and characteristics and what they produce in you in adulthood. But I don't want to dwell on those things. What I want to dwell on is what I am now learning as an adult, as a firstborn daughter now. First thing that I would say is that what I'm learning now is that I come first and boundaries are important. If I were to sit down in a room full of firstborn daughters, this is the very first thing that I would say to them. And it took me a long time to learn this. But the moment I did, oh my gosh, I ran with it. You come first. You come first. It is not selfish to put yourself first. It is not selfish. It is important to put yourself first. You come first, and boundaries are crucial. Now, as much as I love my family, I must put myself first, because I can't be the best for them if I'm not the best for myself. You cannot be the best for your family if you're not the best for yourself. You cannot pour out of an empty cup. When you're full, then you can give. When you're spent, you have nothing to give. So know when to say no. Know when to say it is enough. Know when to say I don't have the energy to deal with this right now. Know when to say I love you, I love my family, but this is how far I can go. It is important. Otherwise, because you're not used to anybody if you're dead. You can't help your family from the grave, right? And I just want to expand on this because I've heard stories of firstborn daughters who sacrifice everything for their families. And don't get me wrong, sacrifice has its place. There are moments when you might need to sacrifice. If there's an emergency, and someone desperately needs help, it is important. Sacrifice is important, right? But sacrificing cannot always be the norm. You will burn out and you would have nothing for yourself. And I've heard stories and I've seen situations where firstborn daughters give everything. They give all of their time. They give all of their financial resources, especially financial resources. Like, there are people who would spend almost everything, if not everything that they earn. They have no savings. They can't afford basic things for themselves. because the moment they receive some money, it immediately goes to family. It is important to give to family. No doubt, it is important. I think it is a responsible thing to do, to look after your family, especially if you have the financial means to. I am not one of those people who say, oh, abandon family. I would never, ever be a champion of such a cause, right? But balance is important. And I used to be like that too. There was a time when I used to give almost 90% of everything that I earned to support my family. And I will never forget the day that I visited home and my mother saw me. I was wearing a pair of jeans that she had given to me some years ago. And out of curiosity, she asked me why I still had that pair of jeans. And I said, you gave it to me. And then she said, you mean, why are you still wearing it? What do you do with the money that you make? And I looked at her perplexed. And I'm like, what do you mean? Like, what do I do with the money that I make? I use it to help you guys. I use it to support you guys. And then she told me something that I will never forget in my life. She looked at me square in the face and she said, no, you don't do that. You take care of yourself first. I will never forget that. There are so many people spreading themselves thin to support their families. And I get that. But then it is important to support your family. It is key, right? But you don't spread yourself thin to do that. You don't run yourself to the ground to do that. So by all means, do it. Look after your family so long as you can, so long as you have the resources. Look after your family, but understand where to draw the line for your own sake. That balance is important. Okay, and then the second thing that I am learning is that I am not my siblings' parents. You are not your siblings' parents. And I'm going to say this again. So if you're a firstborn daughter and you're listening to me, I'm going to repeat it so it sinks. You are not your siblings' parents. You are not their parent. It is not your job to parent your siblings. God did not give you that assignment. That's why you've got parents. Yes, you might be the first child, and sadly the African culture makes you believe that you are a mini parent, but you are not. You are first of all a child. You might have the first position. That's good. That's the way God willed it, but you are not their parent. So take off that pressure from yourself. Take that pressure off you. You are not responsible for the decisions that they make. You are not responsible for how their lives turn out. They have their lives to live. Whatever decision they make is theirs, not yours. So rest. As much as you can, lead, guide, teach. By virtue of your position, these are things that you would do. These are things that you would continue to do. There's no running away from it. You would need to lead. You would need to guide. You would need to teach. But it is not your job to parent. So take that pressure off you. And the next point, and this is very important, and I think that many firstborn daughters need to come to this point, and that is the fact that you need to forgive your parents. Most of the stories that I hear and I read about firstborn daughters show some kind of resentment for their parents, which is understandable. I can understand that. And I can understand you. I can understand how you feel. But you must also understand your parents. And you must also understand that your parents did what they did based on the knowledge that they had. I think that this generation needs to be a little more lenient with parents, because these days when I go online and I see some people talk about how they were raised and, people being cruel about their parents and how their parents raised them and saying all manner of things, negative things about their parents. It hurts me to see things like that. Even though I can understand that, granted, yeah, especially if you were born in an African household, I wouldn't say that most of the time it was very cultural, the way that many of us were raised. But you must understand that your parents did the best that they could with what they knew, and you must learn to grace them. It is important to grace them. It doesn't make it right that they put all of that pressure on you as the first child, but when you look at it, they needed help and they had to rely on you. Like I said, in my case, my parents were working and they had a business that they were both running, and we were living in Lagos. And if you live in Lagos, Nigeria, you understand that it's a hustle and bustle. Like the city is stressful, and they had 6 children, and so they had to work, and they had to rely on me to look after my siblings. So I get that, and it is your job to grace them, but to also try not to make the same mistakes that they did. It is important for you to acknowledge that they did their best. I think that is where the healing actually really starts. Be grateful for your parents. For me, I like to look at things from a place of gratitude. And this is something that I also want to share. Sometimes the best way to look at things is to look at it from a place of gratitude. Be grateful for your parents. Be grateful for the amazing siblings that God gave to you. Think on these things, right? Like I said, our generation is so quick to denigrate the older generation, right? And as much as mental health is important, and as much as some of the decisions that our parents made did not impact us positively, mentally, but we must not be quick to throw the baby out with the bathwater. Our parents were not perfect. We will not be perfect parents too. Yes, we might do better because now we have more knowledge than they did. But guess what? You will not be a perfect parent either. So the onus lies on us to heal, to forgive, and to make up our minds to do better. We don't have to go on Twitter and call our parents names. We don't have to go on social media and denigrate the people who gave us life, no matter how imperfect they may have been. That's not the way. You must be willing to grace them, heal, forgive, and keep it moving. Right? Dwell on this, on the good things that they did. It is important. And and the next thing that I would say that I am learning is to dwell on the good things that being the first child birthed in me. It's always easy to focus on the cons, to focus on the disadvantages, on the problems. Yeah, it hurt me, it affected me mentally, true. But being the first child has also helped me. And I would say that, to be honest, I would not be where I am today if it wasn't for some of the lessons that I learned because of my position as a first child. And I think that sometimes, and this might be true for so many firstborn daughters, that feeling of knowing that you are an example and you've got people looking up to you, it makes you take life a little more seriously, and it makes you work hard, put in the extra effort, and it also makes you very cautious of your actions, because somewhere at the back of your mind you remember that there are people watching you, watching every step that you take, and who will most likely take that step that you are taking. It also made me to value family and taught me to be caring for other people. Yeah, because as a first child, you learn to care for others very quickly, and this is something that I have taken with me even up till adulthood. Also, a few years ago, I resented my parents because I felt they took my childhood away from me. But now that I have learned to let go of that hurt and focus on the good that it produced in me, I am grateful for that, right? And I'd say also that one of the reasons why I'm a very good cook is because I started cooking from a very young age, and that has helped me too. So being the first child spurs me to keep moving, to keep being a better version of myself. And today, when I think about it with a deep sense of gratitude. I am so grateful to God because God continually strengthens me for this. And I'm grateful to God that I've got the amazing siblings that I have. So perhaps this is one of the things that you can do as a firstborn child. Finally, another lesson that I would say that I'm learning is to admit that I am not always strong. Very important, because as the first child, sometimes you're always like, you always want to pretend that everything is okay. You want to be strong for other people. But now I'm learning that it's okay for me to say that I don't have it all together, and to be able to show that to my siblings, to be able to show that to my parents, so that they don't think that I'm some superwoman, so that they know that I have my moments of weaknesses, so that they know that sometimes I fall apart. Sometimes I cry. Sometimes I break down. Sometimes I am just pissed. And I don't have to pretend that I'm perfect, right? It's okay to show that. It is okay to show that I'm a mess sometimes. Like, I don't know what I'm doing. It's okay. It's okay to show that, look, I make mistakes. I have made mistakes and I will continue to make mistakes. And let them see that side of you. You don't have to put up a show just because you were raised to be the good girl. It's okay for them to see the human side of you, in quote, right? So that's it. I hope you found this episode really interesting and insightful. I'm grateful that I get the chance to share this with you today. Thank you so much for listening. I know that today's episode is a bit longer than usual, but I hope that you really enjoyed listening to it, and I hope that you found it to be worth your while. Thank you so much for listening. Till the next time that I'm here with you again, I'm just thinking though, perhaps we need to have a WhatsApp group for firstborn daughters so we can ease each other's burdens, kind of like a group therapy kind of thing, where we just come together and vent and just talk about how we feel, or maybe we can have an annual general meeting where we discuss matters arising. Sounds like that's going to be a lot of fun. Yeah, because it's definitely not easy, but again, I'm grateful to God. Please don't regret being the first child, the firstborn daughter. Know that God made it that way for a reason, and He has given you the strength for it. Of course, I hope that by now you have learned a thing or two about how to balance things, and I also hope that you also begin to make the choice to heal and grow and forgive and make the best out of your position. Anyway, so cheers to you all firstborn daughters, firstborn African daughters. I'm rooting for you all the way. And thank you so much again for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, and if you know any firstborn African daughter that you think would really benefit from listening to this, please share this episode with them. Thank you so much. And if you would like to share feedback with me, please feel free. Send me an email at lifelessonswithlaw@gmail.com. I would really love to hear from you. Thank you so much, and I wish you all of the best. Sending you all of my love all the way from Aussie land. Bye.